Hi, everybody. This is Sarah Katz here, and I'm a partner and co-founder of Spaulding Ridge. And I am so excited. I hope you've been joining us as our first annual conference for Spaulding Ridge, Elevate 21, thinking about the future of cloud. And we can't be talking about the future of cloud without someone from Salesforce and someone that's very passionate about women in sales and just elevating women in general. So if you don't know, Women Elevate is something near and dear to my heart and Spaulding Ridge as we continue to help elevate women at our organization, at our vendors and partners and clients. So part of this is we're doing different sessions like this, but this one's even extra special because it's all connected with women in technology and in sales. So Libby, I'm so thankful and appreciate for you being here. And I know it looks like you're in a very nice outside setting. Can you give a little bit of background about yourself?
Happy to, and thank you for having me, and welcome to the session to everyone that's joined us. Libby Greco. As Sarah said, I'm currently at Salesforce serving as the Vice President of Alliances for North America, which for Salesforce is the US and Canada. I started my career in tech about 25 years ago, back with a company that doesn't even exist anymore, and spent really the first few years as a young woman in technology in high performance computing, which at the time was a very male dominated industry. So I definitely got a little baptism by fire when it came to really learning the ropes as to how to cement yourself and build your brand as a woman in tech. So fast forward to today, I could not be more thrilled to be at Salesforce, which is really built on the shoulders of everything that women in tech brought before as far as high performance computing is concerned. So that's a little bit about me.
And also, I think we talked about it, but you have a passion with someone in your family that you're involved in and actually wanted to be very much a part of this because of just, it's almost like a family thing. Can you tell us more about that?
It is. So I was raised by a wonderful woman who's been very passionate about women in STEM as a career educator, and had been very active in promoting women in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, as we all know, as an educator. And so I now work with her. One of my charities is a chapter that she leads of Seroptimist International. And the whole charter for Seroptimist International is to borrow your phrase, to elevate young women and to really inspire them and encourage them to pursue careers in STEM, particularly for me in tech, and to show them that the opportunities are tremendous and they aren't limited to some of the fields that are more traditionally thought of for women, generally speaking. So it's definitely a passion project, and it's been really exciting to follow some of these young women's careers and to see how the lessons they learned and the participation in some of the conferences actually led them to pursue careers, predominantly in Silicon Valley. This chapter happens to be in Central California. So thank you for bringing that up.
No, of course. I mean, I always appreciate how different ways that we are, how we grew up, how we're influenced. And I know that when we were speaking and we'll talk about through this session, just how I could feel you're very passionate, but like you're speaking from your heart. And so that makes a lot of sense if you were born and raised with that type of thinking. So I know as we talked about, like, what we want to do with this is a couple of things. We don't want to talk about the things that are obvious that people can look up and search. And we want to dive a little bit deeper into just discussions. And I know this one, we're going to focus around women in sales, but also just like the women advantage, right? Because when we were connecting around it, I want to know a little bit more, and I think everybody else does too, is what's your perspective or things that women can do as they're thinking about either representing themselves, presenting themselves, or even just selling or going into a sales type of effort?
Yeah, happy to elaborate. These are some of the things that we talk about within my team quite a bit. I have a tremendous number of very talented women in my organization. And we talk a lot about the advantage really women bring to the table. I think a little known fact, which is it's a scientific fact as I started, believe it or not, before tech. I quickly decided biomed was not my thing, but I learned a little. I learned a little along the way, and one of the things that carried over was that men and women's brains are actually wired very differently, and it really comes down to. I won't bore you with the details, but it's a gray matter, white matter scenario where we are definitely fundamentally different at the neuroscientific level. And one of the things that means for women is that we actually tend to, while we score, I was telling you earlier, like while women score equally, I like to think, if not better, on intellectual testing, uh, we actually we get there in a different way, and I think that's a real advantage. That way is we tend to bring much more empathy to the table. We tend to be more in tune emotionally, and I mean that in a very positive way. I think women and emotion sometimes is derived to be very negative. I deem it as a huge positive because that allows us to read the room and read the audience and really understand and appreciate what the customer is trying to get to. We tend to be more naturally curious, which is incredibly important in sales, to ask those questions and really seek the why and understand what the customer is trying to get to, instead of anticipating what the punchline is and how your product or how your offering can fit into that scenario. We tend to be a little bit more patient and a little more inquisitive. And that's not a knock on our male colleagues. It's just one of those distinctions that we have that I think we need to remember to take advantage of and not be afraid of, and not be afraid to bring that to the table, because it's a definite benefit, not a detriment.
So it's an interesting point because I think the empathy, and this has been actually like a very consistent theme on leadership, which we talked about earlier. We actually had the CEO, Frank Calderoni from Anaplan, speaking about empathy in his book and how leadership look at it. And then you're bringing up empathy and others as well. With that, with having it, how do you know, how are you able to also build like that relatability or that connection, but also be aware and in tune of how people are thinking and feeling for them?
Well, I think yeah, the last, we're all talking about the last year, the last 18 months that we've been through, and what a way to have empathy is the shared experience that was a pandemic. So that's, that was a unique circumstance. That really bonded us and brought us together, and probably helped us form, strangely, if there's any silver lining, more personal relationships, simply because we had universally something in common, which is really unique. But I think that theme is also, when I think about empathy, it is finding those commonalities with your customer, finding those commonalities with your colleagues, and recognizing that underneath the sales charter that we all have and the business charter that we have, that there's a human being under there with a family and passions outside of work, which you kindly kicked off the call with, and things that we can really tap into. Because at the end of the day, people do business with people they like. And people tend to like people who are very personable and can really relate to them, and find those commonalities. And, it's one of the things we talk about a lot. The value of your product and what you bring to the table and how incredible it is and the things that it can do and achieve for any business is one thing. But ultimately, people like to do business with people they like, and I think that's where empathy plays a role. You can bring all of the things to the table.
Yeah, and I think awareness was another topic that we were talking about, and this is one that I could say as I went from different types of roles and realizing from thinking more about individually about like how I think about things, and then expanding that more into like how my client or how my colleague, how the environment is. How do you become more aware? Because I do believe awareness is a pretty big thing, not just in sales, but just in general,
Mm-hmm.
um, as we're connecting with people or understanding the situation. What are some things that people can take back of working on how to become more aware of their circumstances or situations or people?
Yeah, I think we touched on it earlier, and I'll elaborate on that point. I think, being naturally curious, not being afraid to ask diplomatic but and relevant questions of your customers, and starting to really be mindful. We talk at Salesforce a lot about mindfulness, and that translates to everything from being self-aware, which I'll talk about in a second, but also being very mindful of your customer, and that comes from listening actively, asking questions, being present, understanding the things that are important to them, both personally and certainly for the task at hand. Self-awareness is the flip side of that coin. Situationally, you need to be aware, but that is coupled with being self-aware. And a lot of the things we talk about at Salesforce are just spending time every day to take a moment to do just a self-assessment. Where am I? How am I feeling? What is this? How is this settling with me? Why did I react in that way? And really just taking a moment to evaluate, either why you're feeling a certain way, why you reacted a certain way, why you're behaving a certain way. And again, I think as women, we tend to think that's a fault, and get really critical of ourselves, when really it's, as I said, it's actually truly beneficial. And being able to self-analyze and understand the why behind those things can really absolutely help you become more aware of yourself, and help you bring your best self to work every day, and to your customers, and certainly give you that mental calm that helps us be more present, and helps us be a better steward of our business, and a better steward to our colleagues and certainly our customers.
It's like fine tuning the uh, abilities or attributes that we already have and
Yes.
encouraging ourselves to actually use those to be able to understand better about ourselves and others. The more we know about ourselves, the more we can appreciate and be open to hearing other people. Is that that's absolutely true. And more than that, I think also things that I've seen that have worked, like to be aware and present in situations, is um, breathing. You know,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
like
Yeah.
a lot of times we're in the room, and I even recently, like I don't even know why I did it, but I just like stopped breathing because I wanted to listen in more, and I'm like, wait, I can't. What am I like? I
Can't know
need to
when to.
breathe to, yeah. But just like keeping that like just almost in line of your body behaviors as much as your thinking, and understanding like all of that to be better in that in different situations, as well as the more we're starting to get more in person again.
Mm-hmm.
I do think
Exactly.
that that's going to be important.
Yeah, it will be very interesting to see when we get back in back together and in person. Like I was sharing an anecdote with someone I shook hands with the first time a couple weeks ago, and I almost recoiled. It was very strange. And if you ever did that 18 months ago, people would be so offended. but but the gentleman immediately stopped, and he's like, "Oh, I've been vaccinated." It's just the whole social norm thing has been shaken up a little bit. Another tip that I've shared with my team recently along these same lines is, self-awareness and being comfortable in your own skin. We tend to forget how fast we're going, and how many things are pulling at us in many different directions. Speaking of COVID, we've all been home with our husbands, with our kids, with our work all at once, pulling you in all different directions. And that's tough, and it takes its toll. And one of the things that that I've been trying to do, which sounds harder than it is. So I challenge everyone in the audience to try this tonight. Every evening at a specific time, I put all my tech away, like everything, my TV, my iPad, my laptop, my phone, like anything that is plugged, that needs power is put away. And I just spend 30 minutes just in my own skin, either reflecting on the day or talking to one of my neighbors, or, maybe fitting in my yard, what have you. Just something that takes you away. You will be surprised at how hard that is. It is so hard not to reach for your phone, not to want to impulsively go check to see what the email is. So, but I have to tell you, it's been very cathartic, and you feel so much better at the end of the day. And then you can really be present for your family and for your friends, because you had that little bit of buffer between work and them, and you're showing up a little bit better for them, which is important too.
Yeah, like refilling your basically your cup, right? Like making sure your energy drains, or it's like been allocated in different ways, and now you're like building back up the things that give you energy, right? And that could be something for everybody. And technology, either way, it is pulling you in multiple directions, so we have to be in tune. So that's like separating, but connecting, because our whole concept is connecting technologies, connecting people, especially with our value, all business is personal. I guess this is a silly question, but I figured, we're gonna go with it. Now that like we are, like you mentioned, the handshaking, and I used to hug everybody. I still do. And and I don't know, like, if I'm a woman in sales, is that appropriate? Like, am I allowed, I guess it's asking, of course, right? If that's acceptable, or do I now have to pull back and do the handshake or do the fist pump or do the wave, or like, is it more like separation now than ever before? And we have to build that back up. I'm just curious your opinion on this.
We have talked about this too, as we anticipate getting back together with our partners in person. It's hard to say, because everyone's going to have a different reaction. And I have a lot of huggers on my team too, who are filled with the same anxiety. And I think it doesn't hurt to ask. I think we're in an environment now where you need to be your authentic self, and you can't just check that at the door, because that's really who you are, and it's part of how you express yourself and your enthusiasm for being with that person. So I don't think there's any harm in asking permission. And I think now we're in a place where that doesn't sound weird. I think if, 18 months ago, if you asked someone, can I hug, do you mind if I hug you? Like they would look at you like, well, yeah, of course. But I think we're at a point now where people might appreciate that. And there might be some people who are like, oh, you don't want to do that, I was exposed, or whatever.
Or I'm not into that, which is totally okay.
Exactly. I'm not quite back there yet, or whatever. So I think that's one of the things that it will be a very personal decision, but I don't think we should stop being who we are and just find a middle ground to where you seek a little bit of permission to do the thing.
I like that. So we do have a few questions. One is, what is the best advice you would give women starting out in their sales career to succeed?
I love that question. I get that question a lot. And I always say something very, very similar to what I'm about to share with you. And I just said it before. Always bring your authentic self to the table. Don't be afraid to have what we at Salesforce call courageous communications. I think women have a natural tendency to think, oh, I'm so new, that's a dumb question. There are no such things as dumb questions. And I think there's nothing more valuable, as I said earlier, than our natural tendency to be curious. So as you're starting out, you need to be asking a lot of questions. You need to be asking, hey, I'm thinking this, and seeking like not validation, but kind of cross-checking your assumptions. It's fair to assume something, but ask for some confirmation that your assumption is correct, particularly if you're entering a new business environment. Don't be afraid. I remember when I was the only woman at a table for the longest time in tech. And it didn't occur to me to be afraid until people started to tell me, oh my gosh, how do you feel? You're the only woman at the table. I'm like, so what? Who cares?
Same. And
don't be afraid. And you have earned your right to be there. And I would, the last bit I would say is find a good mentor. Always find a good mentor. I use mentors to this very day. I still call upon mentors I had 15, 20 years ago. Your mentors can become some of your lifelong friends, and they will help you find the path, and they will help inspire you to become a mentor in the future, because that's one thing tech really is lacking, and that is a tremendous number of women role models. I think you guys can name some of the role models that that you always see in the news that young women look up to. Aspire to be that. We need more of you.
I agree with the have no fear to ask. Like, what's the worst that's going to happen is you're going to be told no. Exactly. And for some reason, I just always, I don't know. I do think it stems from like my upbringing and just who I was around with my cousins, all boys, and my dad's like, what's the difference?
Exactly.
But like asking and getting the no, that's okay. You're going to survive and you're going to live. Being rejected or being pointed in a different direction is also helpful, because you're learning as you're getting it's all information and data points, just like we would do if we were looking at calculations or in Salesforce data or anything like that.
Exactly.
I absolutely love that. And one thing we're doing at our company that we're now just rolling it out, part of our roadie program, because we're a band. That's our whole culture, just like for yours is, around like trail and all of that, right? So we all have our themes. But what we really thought about is like for our women, we don't want them to just have one perspective. So we are really looking at different perspectives. So a male's and a female's, and also advising them to get like with Bonfire or others, coaching and mentorship outside of the company, but just so that they can have all these different viewpoints that they can then decide how they want to apply it. And it's not just one specific perspective. So we'll see how it goes. I'll let you know, but we're rolling that.
I think it's incredibly important that you do that. There was a Forbes article a couple of years ago that I read, interestingly enough, along those same lines. They actually did a study around companies that only consulted men and companies that invited a more diverse group of perspectives, including underrepresented groups of other ilks. And what they found, companies that saw diverse business decisions saw a 65% increase in our, like a ridiculous percentage of increase, because it was more reflective of the broader customer base that they were all trying to serve. And I remember very specific. It really stuck with me because it was profound. The difference was so profound. So I'll be interested to see if you experience the same results.
You know what? It's always good to experiment and then learn, like we said, right? Continue being curious and learning. And if it works, stick with it and optimize or pivot and try something new. That's our model. Has always been our concept. Why we focus on growth and scale, but you can't grow if you don't experiment as well. But we do have another question. Do you think we expect more from women than we do from men in the workplace?
Mm-hmm. I think it depends. I think it's not this or that. It's both kind of a thing. I think I think an unconscious bias remains. I think an unconscious, I really mean that truthfully. I don't think that anyone intends to do it, but I think that does happen. very unconsciously. I think we've got a long way to go before that is completely eradicated. I think equality in the workplace is still very much an issue that we continue to work on, or an opportunity, I guess I should say more positively, an opportunity we continue to work on. But I would say the answer tends to be, in my opinion, yes, because I don't think we've quite gotten there yet where the scales are truly balanced. I will say it's immensely better, exponentially better than it was 25 years ago. So for those of you that are just starting out, you are starting from you still have a long way to go, and you still have a lot of work to do, and we're all looking to you to continue the good fight to level those scales. But you're starting from a better foundation. So that's the positive.
Yeah, I keep pushing for opportunities and to have a choice and creating that environment. And that's what I really loved. I remember Mark Benioff said, okay, we're going to reevaluate. We're going to see if there's any equity gaps or distribution or changes. And we actually, because we started the company, this is our second round, but 3.5 years ago. So we were able to start from the very beginning, knowing that like we wanted to stay true, no matter if you're male, women, diverse, either way, that everybody was getting paid equally in the right way. And I do think that is part of it is very important, but also the opportunities that are presented and how we recruit and all that. So I appreciate you for just going with the Q&A with me and doing this live. I know there will probably be more questions later on, so I might follow up based on even some of our clients and people at Spaulding Ridge. But thank you so much, Libby. The last question that I always ask everybody, which is, because we're very much a company that loves to read, and back to the curiosity, as you talked about in the beginning, what is the book that you're reading right now?
The book that I'm reading right now. I am reading a very stimulating reading. I'll have to send you the name of it, but it's by Neil Tyson Grass, who is, or Neil deGrasse Tyson, who is one of, not that everybody has a favorite astrophysicist, but he happens to be mine. and he just came out with a new book that is really fascinating. That I'll share. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but it's really good reading, and I'll send it to you so you can maybe send that as a follow up. But for those that are interested in, particularly what just happened this week with the breakthroughs in what may end up being commercial space travel, like it talks a lot about that and where the future holds for the conversion of space and life on Earth here. So interesting reading.
I'll definitely share that. I love learning about space, and would love to read it. And so again, thank you so much, Libby. I know you made it work, and appreciate Salesforce and the partnership that we have and continuing growth that I know we both will have together. So thank you so much, Libby. And thank you everybody that has joined.
Thank you.